Onimusha Way of the Sword. It's finally coming, my wise ones. Honestly, this is one of my most anticipated games of 2026. I have played it and I'm going to play it even more, luckily before Tokyo Game Show, which is very soon next month, as I get to go as press and as a influencer for the first time, which is pretty exciting. So I'm very excited to get even more time with this game, but I have already played it and the preview build and the demo extensively. And honestly, I don't think people are truly aware of how good this game is about to be. And the Onimusha Way of the Sword reviews are coming out very, very shortly. So I'm here to set expectations for that game, for the Onimusha Way of the Sword reviews, because I think that they're going to be so positive that people who weren't interested in this game are going to, want to go and play this. And I understand why it's not appealing to everyone. Perhaps you think it looks like a traditional or boring Souls-like, okay? And I'm here to tell you that it's nothing like a Souls-like. This is an action-focused, deep story kind of RPG, but much more on the action side of things. And the storytelling here is what is very interesting and just good, because Capcom recently have not missed with their recent games. I think Pragmato was a bit of a mixed bag, I will say, and I did make a video explaining why, but everything else that they've put out in recent times has just been absolutely incredible. And some of my favorite Capcom games is when they do experiment. And as someone who has been living in Japan now for 3 years, the way they depict Musashi, who is a real historic kind of samurai, or not exactly a samurai, but more of a ronin, I guess you could say. Now, Miyamoto Musashi was also famous for his philosophy. He left behind not only a trail of bodies, because he was a kind of crazy badass, you could argue, in some ways, but also maybe somewhat unhinged, I guess you could argue. But he did create his own unique philosophy, which I do respect a lot, and that comes from the Book of the Five Rings, which is basically, in some ways, the kind of antithesis and the synthesis, if you want to get all Hegel about it, of Bushido, which is the core samurai philosophy. And I have made a whole separate video breaking down the philosophy of Bushido. I'll leave that up here, so I do highly recommend you take a look at that if you are interested. But it does deal with some of his core ideas, and I really do respect their take on Miyamoto Musashi in this game. And they've actually went back and they took a lot of inspiration from old samurai movies as well in Japan, and a certain actor in particular, to create this, very living, believable character. So the storytelling here is what's really good. Like, all of the characters are a little bit insane and a little bit over the top, but that's the point. They're supposed to be almost kind of comic book cartoonish in a way, where the villains are very, kind of sinister and flamboyant, especially with this first boss fight. But also, I like how it depicts the struggle that he goes through as well, because he is actually part Oni in this, and Oni/Kami are kind of spirits in Japan, Shintoism, that goes back, and I really love that kind of thing. That's what made me interested in Japan in the first place, is their mythology and stuff like that, and their philosophy. And Oni are basically, demons, and that is what you're fighting. You're fighting this corruption, and at times it can be very bleak, which I really like, quite dark, and also sometimes goofy. And I like that it's kind of having that blend of thematics, because it allows for creative, interesting bosses to encounter, and a story that is basically rooted in interesting mythology, but also, pure fantasy, so it can just go absolutely balls to the walls, insane, but immersive and grounded. That is how I would describe the combat. So I'm going to just quickly talk about my overall impressions.
I gotta tell you, it was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
So I do hope you enjoy this video, my wise one. Subscribe if you are new, become a wise one today. If you like a deeper look at video games, explaining their art and the thematics behind them. So if you do enjoy early reviews, yearly reviews, and philosophical videos, you're in the right place. Subscribe, become a wise one, be a part of this great community. It honestly means so much to me having, you guys return, watch my videos, communicate with you guys in the comments. Like, that's the fun of OG YouTube, and I want to keep that alive. So please do sound off in the comments, give the video a like, support me, support the channel, support the music. I do appreciate it a lot. And use your brain for some good, think objectively, and let's dive straight into this. Now, I am going to save most of my positives and negatives for my Onimusha Way of the Sword review that is coming out very shortly, as I have actually played a ton of this game and I absolutely love it. But I will list a few positives and negatives just so you're aware of what the reviews are shaping up to be and give you my final prediction. So honestly, the thing that really makes this stand out, and I know this isn't going to appeal to everyone, some people only care about gameplay feel and that's it, but honestly the art style in this is something I just absolutely love. It's breathtaking to look at, it's the enemy variation that is so good, and the fluidity of combat. So all of those three things combined makes this a fantastic game. It's not a Souls-like, it doesn't rely heavily on dodges and parries. Yes, you can dodge. Yes, there is perfect dodging. Yes, you can parry, but it is an action-focused game, and it's more about how you string attacks together, combinations of different attacks, and your abilities, or using your bow and arrow. Another feature I really love, which does remind me a lot of the OG Fable games like Fable 1 and 2, is basically as you defeat enemies, you have to collect their life essence, like these little orbs that come out of them, to basically, give you a chance to activate your abilities, to heal yourself, to pull off, your special attacks and stuff like that. So it's a constant, like frantic kind of combat system where you have to really master the combat, and there's even times where you can pull off a perfect parry, which is very risky, but it will deal a huge amount of damage. So the combat itself has a lot of risk-reward systems within it, which I really do like. And it's just so fluid, it's just so fun. I can't really say more than that. I love how everything has physics in the environment, the characters, and how you can interact with the world around you. You can, flip a table to hide behind, cover when there's archers. You can bash enemies into pots. And then the bosses are very cinematic, unlike Dark Souls or something where it's all gameplay focused. It is a little bit more cinematic. They all have their own distinct phases, but it's all very fast and it's all very much kind of like a dance. That's the best way to describe it. It's much more cinematic in nature than other games I've played, and that sets it apart from other Souls-likes. Now also Miyamoto Musashi, and his philosophy dealt with a key thing that my own philosophy that I'm trying to build on this channel, Solism, also taps into, and that is clarity of perception. He stated in his book that you should see things for what they are, not what you wish them to be. And that kind of falls in line with my own perception around objective reality, a shared ontological reality that we all need to unify behind, and that is judge things for what they are, not what you think them to be. It's very similar, but it taps more into the underlying realities and our metaphysical emergent thought processes on top. And I do think that's very important. And although the game itself doesn't tap deep into those philosophical themes, it does tackle with, interesting story beats around the Oni, around, the kind of shadow, the Union shadow, and, Musashi himself kind of slowly becoming corrupted over time and what he's willing to sacrifice. And I really just think they nailed with the storytelling. I highly recommend that you play it with the Japanese original voice work, because the English version definitely does make it feel a little bit more corny and cheesy, and I just don't think they really understood the translation correctly. So honestly, play it in the original Japanese, it's much better. Now, the only criticism I could really give this game is it's not terribly complex in its gameplay department. Like I said, it's not a huge open world, you're not going to get lost. There are these big hub areas that you get to explore, and you can choose, there is different paths you can go down, side exploration, harder enemies to fight, stuff like that. But it's not a game where you're going to be collecting a lot of loot and stuff like that. It's a game where you're primarily mastering the combat system and focusing on upgrading your character and making him stronger with abilities, and then occasionally unlocking new weapons and skills as you progress the game. But it is kind of linear, but I wouldn't describe it as like a Sony game experience. It does have much more depth to it with the combat, but it's mostly the depth of the story and the combat, not so much the level design, but it's more so about the enemy encounters, and the amount of enemy variation that there is why I think this game is truly special. Now, the bosses themselves are just fantastic to fight. I love the visceral nature of the combat, like the way you split demons in half. It reminds me of like OG Prince of Persia and stuff like that, and it's just got such like fluid. The combat is just so dynamic, and it just feels so good to master. Even if, it does feel a little bit simplistic at times, it's got that very, grounded, immersive feeling, kind of like Ghost of Tsushima, instead of something like an Assassin's Creed. That's the best way to describe it, I guess. So don't go in expecting a deep RPG or anything like that, but expect there to be, a good narrative, good bosses to fight, even if they are a little bit more cinematic in nature, not so much focused on gameplay, but you could call them tropey bosses. But honestly, they do have distinct phases to them. Good enemy variation, so many wacky, crazy enemies.
Nice.
And then expect there to be, some puzzle solving. That's a lot of what this is, to break up the gameplay. Not really like platforming or anything like that. And honestly, the puzzle solving elements are not that difficult. Don't go in thinking it's going to be like Silent Hill 2 or anything. And then of course, your kind of classic, upgrading resource gathering system. So Onimusha Way of the Sword reviews, I think, should be very positive. If people do not like this game, then I weep for humanity. They are obviously missing the artistry behind it all. But obviously people like me who love the thematics of, Shintoism and, the Oni and this kind of aesthetic in ancient Japan are obviously going to love this game a lot more. But without being biased, I will say some of my points were biased. But objectively, the combat itself is just great, okay? It has such good weight to it, and it's a combat system that you have to master. And if you're looking for a good story game to get invested in with strong characters, decent writing, but it's the thematics that matter more, in my opinion, with a game like this. Good bosses, puzzles, and just, a good, solid, like, Capcom game. And they haven't missed recently. They know how to make unique experiences, unique combat experiences. Just look at Pragmata. Then I think, you'll definitely enjoy this. And the reviews will mostly be positive. I won't say they'll be universally, like, 10 out of 10. But I do see this sitting at around, like, an 8 out of 10 or something like that. So look forward to my Onimusha Way of the Sword review. But I will be very surprised if Onimusha Way of the Sword reviews are going to be negative. That would just be very sad to see. But I don't think this game is going to be for everyone either. So if you are a big fan of, games like Assassin's Creed and stuff like that, then I don't think this game will be necessarily for you. If you are a fan of more deliberate combat like Ghost of Tsushima or Dark Souls or something like that, then yes, definitely check this out. So I do hope you enjoyed this video, my wise ones. I hope you get the chance to check this game out, and look forward to my Onimusha Way of the Sword review coming out very shortly. I do think that this is very special, but I will be obviously, but I will obviously admit I do have some personal biases towards this game. But honestly, if you like a good hack and slash, good single player adventure, I don't see what is not to love about this. And I honestly think what it's doing is special, even if maybe for some people it looks a little bit generic or, perhaps simplistic. I think if you are a person who loves artistic depth, then you're going to find a lot to like about this game, especially if you are into Japan and all of that kind of stuff. So look forward to my review. Thank you so much for watching, my wise ones. Have a blessed day. Look after yourselves, and I'll see you in the next video. And I'm looking forward to chatting with you in the comments. Peace out.